I said he looked like a teenager with no muscle, and now he got smacked and divorced me. Like, who does that? I'm Lindsay, 28, and I never thought I'd be sitting here telling this story, but here we are. I met Kyle 5 years ago at this bar downtown where I was working. He wasn't like those gym bros with their protein shakes and biceps. He was just this skinny guy with a nice smile who tipped well and actually listened when I talked. Back then, I thought it was refreshing, you know? Someone who wasn't obsessed with his appearance and instead had this stable government job with benefits. Like actual health insurance. My broke minimum wage butt was impressed. We moved pretty fast. 6 months into dating, we got this cute little apartment together, and I'll be honest, it was a major upgrade from my old place with 3 roommates. Kyle paid most of the rent since he made way more than I did at my retail job, and I was totally fine with that arrangement. I mean, I was saving up to start my own business anyway. I've got so many ideas. An online boutique, a wellness coaching thing, maybe even my own makeup line. I just need to figure out which one would blow up fastest on TikTok, you know? Anyway, things were good for a while. Kyle was sweet, dependable, and never complained when I spent my paychecks on new clothes or makeup that I needed for my future influencer career, instead of contributing to groceries or utilities. But I started noticing things, like how his shirts hung off him like he was a coat hanger, or how his arms were basically twigs compared to these fitness guys I followed on Instagram. It wasn't really an issue at first, but then my FYP started showing me all these couples where the guy looked like he could bench press a car, and there I was with Kyle, who looked like he'd struggle with a heavy backpack. I tried to be subtle at first. I'd tag him in workout videos or send him transformation reels. "This could be you," I'd say, trying to be encouraging. But Kyle would just laugh it off, or say he didn't have time between work and helping his parents with their house. Whatever. I kept scrolling through my feed, watching these perfect relationships unfold in 60-second clips, and feeling like I was missing out. Then came this company dinner at Kyle's work. I bought this gorgeous dress with the money I was supposed to be saving for my business, but investments in your appearance are important, right? When Kyle came out in his suit, I couldn't help but notice how it just hung off him. "You look like a teenager playing dress-up in his dad's clothes," I said, and immediately regretted it when I saw his face fall. But I didn't apologize. Instead, I doubled down. "I'm just saying, maybe if you put on some muscle, you wouldn't look like you're drowning in fabric." That night, I could tell something shifted. Kyle was quiet during the dinner, and when his coworkers' wives asked about us, I found myself doing that thing where I'd praise him for his stability and kindness, but throw in these little jokes about his physique. "He might not be able to open jars for me, but he can sure file my taxes," I'd say, and everyone would laugh while Kyle smiled tightly. I posted a few selfies from the bathroom, but none with Kyle. My caption was all about networking and business connections. Like I wasn't just a retail worker with dreams. On the way home, he asked if I was embarrassed by him. I told him I wasn't, but that he could try a little harder. "Look at my feed," I said, showing him these couples where the guys all looked like Marvel superheroes. "Don't you want us to be like that? Don't you want me to be proud to show you off?" He didn't say anything, just stared out the window the whole ride home. That night, he slept on the couch, claiming he had a headache. I scrolled through TikTok until 3 a.m., liking videos of personal trainers and wondering why Kyle couldn't just make more of an effort for me. A few weeks later, I noticed Kyle started going to the gym. He didn't make a big announcement about it. I just saw him packing workout clothes one evening. Instead of being supportive, I rolled my eyes and said, "Finally decided to do something about those twig arms?" He didn't respond, just zipped up his bag and left. When he came home all sweaty, I wrinkled my nose and told him to shower immediately. I didn't ask how it went or encourage him. Looking back, maybe I should have, but I was annoyed it took him so long to start trying. Kyle kept going to the gym 3 times a week, but I couldn't see any changes. "You know, most people see results by now," I told him 1 month in. He muttered something about it taking time, but I wasn't convinced. Meanwhile, I was getting more followers on TikTok from posting workplace drama and day-in-the-life videos, carefully angling the camera to hide our modest apartment. I barely mentioned Kyle in my content. What was the point? He wasn't the kind of guy who would help my videos go viral. Our day-to-day life had a pattern. I'd work my retail shifts, come home, and spend hours scrolling and planning content while Kyle cooked dinner after his full day at the office. He'd ask about my day, and I'd give half answers while watching videos. When he talked about his work, I'd nod along without really listening. Sometimes he'd suggest weekend activities, hiking, a local festival, even just a movie night. But I'd usually say I needed to create content or research business ideas. In reality, I'd end up watching other people's lives on my phone while Kyle read a book or worked on some home project. The apartment was technically ours, but Kyle did all the upkeep. He cleaned the bathroom, did the laundry, took out the trash, all while I critiqued his efficiency or complained about how he folded my clothes wrong. When bills came due, he'd gently remind me about my portion, and I'd promise to pay him back when my business takes off. He never pushed it, just quietly paid everything himself. I see now how much I took advantage of his patience. Things really went downhill at his friend's barbecue. Everyone's partners were there, including this guy Mark, who clearly lived at the gym. While the guys were grilling, I found myself sitting with the other women, and somehow Kyle became the topic. "He's such a sweetie," I said, "but honestly, I feel like I'm dating a high schooler sometimes. The man has the muscle definition of a string bean." The women laughed awkwardly, and one of them glanced over at Kyle. I realized he was within earshot. The hurt in his eyes was obvious, but instead of apologizing, I doubled down. "What? You know it's true, babe. Maybe Mark can give you some pointers." That night, Kyle confronted me. "Do you know how much that hurt, Lindsay? In front of everyone?" I got defensive. "If you're this sensitive about it, maybe do something about it. I'm just being honest. Would you rather I lie?" He asked if I was even attracted to him anymore. I hesitated too long before answering, and he walked away. That night, I watched him staring at himself in the bathroom mirror, pinching his skinny arms with a defeated look. Instead of feeling bad, I felt annoyed. Why couldn't he just beef up like the guys on my feed? Why was I stuck with someone who made me feel like I was settling? The next day, I made a TikTok about relationship standards without mentioning Kyle directly, but everyone who knew us would know exactly who I was talking about. It got more views than anything I'd posted before. The validation felt amazing, drowning out the nagging voice telling me I was being cruel. For the next few weeks, things were tense at home. Kyle withdrew, spending more time at the gym or working late. I told myself it was fine, more time for me to focus on growing my following. I started ordering takeout more since Kyle wasn't cooking as much, always using his credit card. When he'd mention money, I'd remind him about all the business ideas I was developing that would totally pay off soon. I even showed him sketches for potential logos for my latest idea. Customized water bottles with motivational quotes. He just nodded, no longer offering to help or showing much interest. One weekend, I went shopping with my friend Amber, who kept asking if things were okay between Kyle and me. "He seems different lately," she said. "More distant." I brushed it off, blaming his new gym obsession. "He's probably just tired from all the pointless lifting," I said, rolling my eyes as I charged another outfit to the credit card Kyle had given me for emergencies. That night, I posted mirror selfies in my new clothes with captions about investing in yourself and looking the part to be the part. Kyle saw me taking the pictures but didn't comment like he used to. His silence irritated me. Wasn't he supposed to compliment me? Last weekend was when everything fell apart. Kyle and I were invited to this bar downtown to celebrate his coworker's promotion. I spent 3 hours getting ready, changing outfits 5 times, and doing a full face of makeup while Kyle waited patiently. I even recorded a "Get Ready With Me" video that I was sure would pop off. When we arrived, I immediately scanned the room for photogenic spots and started taking selfies, barely acknowledging the people Kyle introduced me to. After a few drinks, I got louder, more animated, especially when talking to the better-looking guys at the party. Kyle was quiet all night, nursing the same beer while I was on my 4th cocktail, that he paid for, of course. His coworker James came over with his girlfriend, and she gushed about how they'd just gotten back from hiking. Kyle's not really the outdoorsy type, I announced to the group. He'd probably get winded walking up a hill. Everyone laughed uncomfortably, while Kyle's face flushed red. I'm just keeping it real, I added when I saw his expression. It's not like you could carry me if I twisted my ankle, unlike James here. I patted James's obviously muscular arm. As the night went on, I kept making these jokes at Kyle's expense. When the bar got more crowded, some drunk guy bumped into me, spilling his beer on my new top. Watch it, I snapped. The guy turned around, he was huge like linebacker huge, and got in my face. What did you say to me? He growled. Before I could respond, Kyle stepped between us. I almost laughed at the sight, my skinny husband trying to face down this human mountain. She didn't mean anything by it, Kyle said, his voice steady despite being obviously intimidated. Let's all just enjoy our night. The big guy looked Kyle up and down and smirked. Is this your boyfriend? This little boy? I should have diffused the situation, but instead, I rolled my eyes. Tell me about it, I muttered, just loud enough for both of them to hear. The guy laughed. Kyle's face went completely blank, and in that moment, I realized I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Apologize to my wife? Kyle said, his voice tighter now. The guy started laughing harder. Or what, string bean? And then it happened so fast, Kyle tried to push the guy back, and the next thing I knew, the big guy had landed 2 solid punches. Kyle went down, blood streaming from his nose. Bouncers rushed over and escorted the other guy out, while Kyle sat there on the sticky bar floor, holding his face. My first instinct, and I'm not proud of this, was to grab my phone, not to call for help, but to check if anyone had recorded what happened. Could you imagine the views? But then I saw Kyle's eyes. Something in them had changed. He refused help standing up, wiping blood from his face with the back of his hand. In the Uber home, I couldn't stop myself from making it worse. What were you thinking? I hissed. You could have just walked away. You know you can't fight. Kyle stared straight ahead, silent. This is so embarrassing, I continued. Everyone saw. Everyone's probably talking about it right now. When we got home, Kyle went straight to the bathroom. I followed, watching as he cleaned blood off his face. You should have just let it go, I said, leaning against the doorframe. It's not like anyone expected you to actually do anything. You're not exactly the hero type. Kyle looked at me in the mirror, his eyes unreadable. Would you have preferred if I'd let him continue? He asked quietly. Would that have been less embarrassing for you? I didn't answer directly. I'm just saying, it wasn't smart to try to fight someone 3 times your size. What did you expect would happen? Kyle didn't come to bed that night, or the next. He slept on the couch, got up before me, came home late. When he was home, he was on his phone or laptop, barely speaking. I tried to act normal, posting my usual content and working on my latest business idea. Custom phone cases with inspirational quotes. I asked Kyle if he could spot me some money for supplies, but he said he was reconsidering our financial arrangement. Whatever that meant. The week after the bar incident was weirdly quiet. Kyle barely spoke to me, leaving early for work and coming home late. I noticed him taking more calls outside or in the spare room we used for storage. Once, I heard him mention lawyer and felt a flicker of worry, but pushed it away. Kyle wouldn't leave me. Where would I live? How would I pay for things? Besides, we'd been together for 5 years. You don't just throw that away over one bad night. To cheer myself up, I went shopping and bought some expensive skincare products from this brand I saw all over TikTok. When the credit card declined, I was shocked. I called Kyle immediately. Why is the card not working? I demanded. I need these things for my content. His voice was cold when he answered. I canceled that card yesterday. I should have done it months ago. I was furious. How am I supposed to build my business without the right products? I yelled. He hung up on me. Actually hung up. I posted a vague rant about unsupportive partners that got lots of sympathetic comments, but the validation didn't feel as good as it used to. One night, about a week after the bar incident, I came home to find Kyle on a video call. He quickly ended it when I walked in. Who was that? I asked. Financial advisor, he said shortly. Since when do we have a financial advisor? I pressed. We don't, he replied. I do. That bothered me, but I let it go. I needed him to transfer money for the rent anyway. When I mentioned it, he said he'd already paid his portion directly to the landlord. Your half is due tomorrow, he added, not looking up from his laptop. My half, I sputtered. Since when do I pay half? You know I'm saving for my business. Kyle finally looked at me. Your portion is $800. I've been covering it for 3 years, not anymore. I was shocked. We argued late into the night. I called him selfish, reminded him how my business would benefit us both once it took off. He just looked tired. 3 years, Lindsay, he kept saying. 3 years of paying for everything while you buy clothes and makeup and never launch any of these businesses. 3 years of being belittled and emasculated. I told him he was being dramatic, that couples joke about each other all the time. He didn't respond, just went back to the couch. I posted a cryptic TikTok about men not supporting women entrepreneurs that got decent engagement, which made me feel a little better. The next morning, I woke up to find Kyle gone, along with his gym bag and laptop. I assumed he'd gone to work early again. When I checked my phone, I saw my latest TikTok had gotten a lot of attention overnight. I spent the day responding to comments and planning new content ideas, temporarily forgetting about our fight. I even started researching suppliers for those inspirational phone cases, convinced this would be the business that finally took off. I made a list of all the influencers I'd send free products to, imagining how they'd rave about my designs to their followers. When Kyle didn't come home that night, I started to worry. I called him, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted his friends, but they claimed not to know where he was. I even called his parents, who seemed oddly unsurprised and said they'd tell him I called if they heard from him. It was weird. Everyone was acting like they knew something I didn't. I spent the night watching our front door, jumping every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, but Kyle never appeared. 2 weeks after the bar incident, I came home from work to find Kyle sitting at the kitchen table with a folder in front of him. We need to talk, he said. His voice was different, colder, more detached. I sat down, expecting another conversation about bills. Instead, he slid the folder toward me. Inside were divorce papers. My heart stopped. What is this? I asked, even though it was obvious. I'm done. Lindsay, he said simply. I've been unhappy for a long time, and the other night made me realize it's never going to change. I was floored. This wasn't supposed to happen. Kyle was stable, dependable. He was my safety net while I figured out my career. You can't do this, I said, panic rising. We can work on things. I'll be better. He shook his head. I've already found a new place, he told me. I've paid next month's rent here to give you time to figure things out. After that, it's on you. I started crying, a mix of genuine hurt and tactical tears that usually worked on him. This time, he just watched me, unmoved. What about all our plans? I sobbed. What about my business? Kyle actually laughed at that. What business, Lindsay? You've had a new idea every month for 3 years and never followed through on any of them. Meanwhile, I've paid for everything. Rent, utilities, groceries, your car insurance. I've supported you while you spent your money on clothes and makeup for social media posts. His words hit me like a slap. That's not fair, I protested. I'm building my brand. These things take time. He stood up, grabbing a suitcase I hadn't noticed by the door. I've also removed you from my bank accounts and credit cards, he added. The car is in my name, so you'll need to find alternative transportation by the end of the month. The reality was crashing down. No Kyle meant no safety net. No one to pay the bills while I found myself. You can't just leave me with nothing, I cried, real fear setting in now. I gave you 3 years of my life. Kyle paused at the door, and I gave you 3 years of financial support while you belittled me and made me feel worthless, he said quietly. I'm done being your ATM and emotional punching bag. With that, he walked out. I immediately posted a tearful TikTok about being abandoned that blew up bigger than anything I'd ever posted. The supportive comments poured in. You deserve better, Queen, and his loss? But they couldn't drown out the panic. How was I going to afford this apartment? My job barely covered my phone bill and shopping habits, let alone rent and utilities. The days after Kyle left were a blur of panic attacks and frantic job searches. I called in sick to work for 3 days straight, spending hours scrolling through job listings that all seemed to require skills I didn't have. I reached out to friends for loans, but most made excuses or offered much less than I needed. One friend finally told me the harsh truth. People had seen how I treated Kyle, both in person and through my social media posts. They weren't exactly eager to help me now. I tried to negotiate with the landlord for more time, but he was firm about the deadline. When I mentioned Kyle's name, hoping for sympathy, the landlord just shook his head. Kyle already explained the situation. The apartment lease transfers to your name next month, or you move out. I couldn't believe Kyle had already talked to him. It felt like he'd been planning this for weeks. Out of desperation, I called Kyle's parents. His mom answered, but was surprisingly cold. "We've always treated you like family, Lindsay," she said. "But we've also seen how you've treated our son for years. The constant put-downs, the financial drain, the public humiliation. We love you, but we stand by Kyle's decision." I hung up, stunned. Had everyone seen what was happening except me? In a last-ditch effort, I texted Kyle, promising to change, to get therapy, to contribute financially. His response was brief. "I hope you do all those things, Lindsay. Not for me, but for yourself and your next relationship. I've moved on." That night, I cried until I had no tears left, finally facing the consequences of years of selfish behavior. It's been 3 months since Kyle left. I had to move to a tiny studio I can barely afford, even with picking up extra shifts. I sold most of my nice clothes and makeup to cover the security deposit. My TikTok following has actually grown. Turns out, divorce drama gets views, but it hasn't translated into any real money. I tried launching that phone case business, but after selling exactly 2 cases to coworkers who felt sorry for me, I gave up. The divorce was finalized last week. Kyle was fair with our few shared assets, but firm about not providing any ongoing support. I saw him at the courthouse. He looked different. Not just the obvious physical changes from his continued workouts, but something in how he carried himself. More confident. Meanwhile, I felt like a shadow of myself, wearing the same 3 outfits on rotation because I can't afford to shop anymore. One of the hardest parts has been seeing my friend group dissolve. Turns out, most of my friends were actually Kyle's friends or their partners. Without him, those invitations stopped coming. I tried to maintain some friendships, but conversations became awkward when they realized I couldn't afford the brunches and shopping trips anymore. Some friends straight up told me they'd always thought I treated Kyle badly, and were glad he'd finally stood up for himself. That stung more than I expected. My parents have been supportive, but not in the way I wanted. Instead of offering financial help, my mom suggested I learn to live within my means for the first time. My dad helped me create an actual budget, which was horrifying. Seeing my income versus expenses in black and white made me realize how much Kyle had been subsidizing my lifestyle. My mom even suggested therapy to work on some patterns she'd noticed in my relationships. I agreed just to make her happy, but after 2 sessions, I stopped going. It was too uncomfortable having someone point out my flaws without immediately making me feel better about them. Sometimes I scroll back through my old posts, the ones where I made fun of Kyle's appearance or complained about him not supporting my entrepreneurial journey. I wince at them now. Not because I fully recognize how cruel I was, though sometimes I do see glimpses of that, but mainly because I realize how good I had it. I had someone who paid the bills, who gave me the freedom to pursue my dreams, even if I wasted that freedom. Yesterday, a mutual friend told me Kyle is dating someone new, a personal trainer he met at his gym. They posted a hiking picture together. He looked happy, healthier, stronger. I cried myself to sleep, not just because he's moved on, but because it hit me that I'm now experiencing consequences, for maybe the first time in my adult life. Do I regret what I did? Sort of. I regret losing the financial stability. I regret not having someone to fall back on. But if I'm being completely honest, part of me still feels like Kyle overreacted. Like, don't all couples tease each other? Wasn't he being too sensitive? And okay, maybe I shouldn't have spent so much money on clothes and makeup, but I was investing in my future. He just couldn't see the bigger picture. So here I am, 28, divorced, working a job I hate, living in an apartment I can barely afford, with nothing to show for the last 5 years except some social media followers who are already losing interest now that the divorce drama has cooled down. I said he looked like a teenager with no muscle, and now he got smacked and divorced me. The joke's on me, I guess. But I'm still not sure it was entirely my fault. If he'd just been less sensitive or tried harder to look like the guys I admired online, maybe we'd still be together. Maybe I'd still have my safety net while figuring out what I really want to do with my life. Maybe the real problem was that Kyle never understood me, not the other way around.